Hello, welcome to today's session where we'll talk about adding a metric store to your information architecture. I'm Dave Menninger with Ventana Research. I'd like to begin with an image that helps us understand what we're going to talk about today. So many organizations tend to keep their analytics and their data strategy separate. And so what I'd like you to think about is whether or not your metric strategy is connected to your data strategy, or like this image represents, are they completely disconnected? And I'm going to suggest that the two ought to be very tightly connected. And we'll talk more about how you can do that today. But I'd like to frame the discussion with an image like this before we get to the boring agenda slide. And so here's the boring agenda slide. Today we're going to talk about a little bit about our research just so you understand where it's coming from. I'd like to compare and contrast metrics and data. We'll talk about a metric store, what it is and how you might use it, and what the value is that a metric store provides. And then I'll leave you with some recommendations. So a quick background on our research. We research by collecting data from thousands of organizations on their use of technology. And most of the information we're going to be referring to today comes from our analytics and data benchmarks and our data governance benchmark. We try to get a good cross-representation of organizations in this research, so it really does represent all size companies and companies from around the world. I'm not going to review my background in detail here, but just to summarize, I've been in and around the data and analytics market for over 30 years, and a lot of that time has been spent bringing products to market in this space. And for the last 7 years or so, I've been working with Ventana Research to conduct research on this very same market and to share that research with organizations like yours so you can understand what the latest trends are in technology. So let's talk about metrics as opposed to data. So metrics are quantifiable measures that organizations use to track and assess things, to understand how their processes are performing. And they're often derived from other data or other metrics. So what are some examples of metrics? For instance, period-to-period growth is an example of a metric. Revenue per employee is a metric. The utilization rate, so if you, for instance, are in a services industry, the amount of time that the person is working on billable tasks versus the total time that they're getting paid, that would represent a utilization rate. And so some of these things could be raw data elements, but many and probably most metrics are based on a combination of other data points that are in some sort of mathematical formula. They're computed from these other pieces of data. In fact, the computations could be relatively complex. It could involve a forecast or a projection. So for instance, in the real estate industry, you might be trying to project the occupancy and rent generated by a very large building. You're going to take occupancy rates and rents per unit and assumptions about interest rates, assumptions about repairs, and all of those things are going to be put together into a series of formulas that would give you some sort of projection on the profitability of that particular rental property. Now, the metrics themselves include a definition of how the metric is calculated, but you should also be including in your definition of a metric the goal or target associated with the number. So, for instance, let's say you have the number 7. Is 7 good or bad? Without some definition of the goal or the target, you don't know whether that number is good or bad. And I've tried to represent that on the screen here with just sort of a black and white representation of the little speedometer there. But if we bring the goals into the picture, we can now see whether this number is good or bad. It's in the green zone, meaning good. It could be in yellow or orange or red. And so defining these goals or targets is a critical part of defining your metrics. You want to make sure that those goals are shared throughout the organization. People understand what the goals are associated with a metric. So what are your options for storing metrics? Well, a lot of organizations probably store their metrics in their data platform. The data platform might be relational or non-relational. If it's relational, it's very widely accessible in the organization. That's great. But the expressions that you can create are limited by SQL, or perhaps they're conducted outside of the database. But it's a limiting language to try and express some of those different metrics that we talked about by just using SQL. If you're using a NoSQL platform, It's a little easier to modify your business model, but the expression language is probably proprietary to that NoSQL database. So not a lot of ability to share those easily throughout the organization. Other organizations, probably most, store a lot of their metrics in their BI tools. Gives you a great range of expressions that you can include. Typically, the BI tools are pretty good at that. But those expressions are really only accessible within that BI tool. It's pretty hard to share those across different tools, and many organizations have more than one BI tool. So maybe you might consider using your data engineering tool. So engineer these expressions into the data pipelines that you have. Again, once they're computed, very widely accessible, but that means that all the expressions have to be pre-computed and stored, which could mean that the data is out of date when it's accessed, and it could, result in some explosion of your database. So another option is to use a calculation engine or a semantic layer. Sometimes these are incorporating OLAP technology, or they might be other types of calculation engines. They're often widely accessible by the tools, and they do provide a universal abstraction layer, so it's good from the expressiveness perspective, but they lack the catalog, governance, and collaboration capabilities that would really make this useful and valuable throughout the organization. So the other option is a purpose-built metric store, which we're going to talk more about today. And that improves upon the calculation engine, adding those things we talked about in terms of catalog, governance, collaboration, and APIs. We'll talk about why APIs are important in a moment. So what is a metric store? Well, a metric store is a repository, and it's a repository for the rules that we talked about, those definitions of the calculations, how they're computed, the goals and the targets associated with the metric. All of that gets stored in a repository. And the reason it's in a repository is to make it easy to share and collaborate around the organization regarding these metrics. It includes the computation engine, right? So an expressive way to calculate lots of different things that might be behind the metrics in your organization. And it provides a layer, a way to access the metrics through the various BI tools that are probably in use in your organization. As I mentioned, it includes those goals or targets and a way to express those. But it also catalogs the information that's available through the metrics engine. That catalog is important. We'll talk more about that and share some of our research on why catalogs are important. But it's a way to help people find the data and the metrics that are available in the organization. The metrics store should also have an API, because as we get more sophisticated in our applications and more sophisticated in the application of analytics, some of those analytics are going to be embedded into applications. They're going to be embedded into processes. And you want to be able to access this information via APIs to accomplish that embedding. So there's some activities that will happen entirely automated. There won't be a person involved. And so you'll need API access to accomplish some of those things. And then we've set up this metric store to capture all this information. You also then have a framework to manage the policies and who can access them and who can modify those policies. So that should be another part of your metric store as well. Now, if we're going to be relying on the metric store for all of these computations, you need to make sure that the metric store also delivers performance and scalability. There'll be many people in your organization accessing the metric store. And so you want to make sure that it can deliver interactive response times as people are requesting these different metrics and the calculations that have been performed. So I mentioned a little bit about governance, and I want to talk about why governance is important and how you should think about governance. In the world without a metric store, you have information in different places. You have it in your database, you have it in your pipelines, you have it in your calculation engine, wherever that might be, if it's in the BI tool or separate. You need to think about designing governance into your architecture from the beginning. And why do I say that's important? Our research shows that good governance is highly correlated with satisfaction in analytics. So organizations that do a better job with governance express higher satisfaction in the analytics that they're performing. We also have information about how important it is to govern metrics. More than half of the participants in our research, 53%, include metrics in the category that's most important to govern. Unfortunately, only 43% are governing it. So there's this disconnect between how important they think it is and what they're actually accomplishing today. The other thing about governing metrics is that it increases the trust in the data, or it's correlated with increased trust in the data. Nearly half, 46%, consider, when they govern metrics, consider their data to be well trusted. Now compare that with 15% of organizations who consider their data well trusted if they're not governing metrics. That suggests to you that metrics are a very important part of the information that you're governing. Now, one of the ways you get people involved in governing is by using a data catalog. Data catalogs are really an important element of data governance today. They make people willing to participate in the governance process. You help people find the information they need through the data catalog, and then they're willing to say, yeah, I'm happy to participate in the governance processes. You can see who's accessing the information. You can see how it's being used. And the benefit to that person is that they're able to find and use the information they need more easily. And nearly all organizations, 9 in 10, consider data catalogs to be an important part of their data governance processes. But the value is going to be much more limited if it doesn't include the metrics. Think back to that 15% figure of those who trust their data. So I would suggest that metrics are arguably more important than the data that you're governing. If you're not governing metrics, you may not be governing the most important part of the information you're processing in your organization. So as I talked about collaboration, analytics is a team sport. It's nearly, it's very rarely occurs that one person is conducting the entire analytics process. One person accessing the data, preparing the data, doing the calculations associated with that data, making the decision, and then implementing the results of that decision. So if that's not the case, you need a platform to share the information and collaborate around the information that's involved in the analytics process. So having collaboration built into your metric store is a way to accomplish that. And again, I would suggest that collaborating around analytics and metrics is more important than just collaborating around the data. Now, when we asked the participants in our research how important is collaboration, more than 2/3, so those two darker wedges in the chart here, 31% and 37%, so 68% total, consider collaboration to be an important part of their data and analytics processes. So we've covered a bunch of information here about metrics and metric stores. So let me try and wrap this up into some recommendations. Don't leave your metrics management to chance. So this fragmented world where some of your metrics are in the database and some are in your data pipelines and some are in your BI tools, right? It's happenstance then. You're relying on the organization to piece all these different things together. Consider that your metrics are more important than your data, right? We showed some of the research about how that can be true. So consider a metric store as a way to impose that discipline around your management of the metrics in your organization. So if you have a metric store as part of your architecture, you're very likely going to be able to improve your business performance. You're going to make this information more accessible. You're going to make it better governed. You're going to make it more consistent throughout the organization. Now that only works if you make that metric store widely available throughout the organization. And widely available means accessible to all the BI tools that you're working with, and it means a performant architecture that delivers the concurrency and scalability that you need to service all the people in your organization. So here's a little bit of social media information. If you want to follow up with me or want to review some of the research that we've shared here, it's available on our website. I'll leave this up for a second so you can make a note of it. And I'd like to thank you for listening to this discussion about metric stores today, and consider how you can incorporate a metric store into your information architecture.
Everyone, my name is Kurniawan. I am a senior solution architect with Kyligence. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Kyligence and our exciting metrics platform that you can try after presentation. So I'll start with who we are. then talk about why metric is important and how Kyligence can help your organization managing metrics better, followed by 2 case study for metrics platform. Finally, Q&A session plus and trial information. Kyligence. Our company founded in 2016 by original creators of Apache Kyligence. We started as a big data company rooted from open source community. Our US headquarters in San Jose, California. So you can see here some of our clients. You probably recognize some of the brand here. Our solution have helped companies in their digital transformation journey and receive multiple awards. Kyligence Enterprise and Cloud help organizations managing their data to get business insights and automate business processes using AI. We want to take a step further with the Kyligence to help organizations managing their business goal. Before we dive into Kyligence, let's talk about metrics. Why they are so important? Well, decision makers and people across business functions, such as finance and operation, use metrics to measure performance and progress. Metrics are their common language. Metrics can be used to support a story. For example, as today we have hit over 90% of our 2022 revenue goal. Even in our daily conversation, metrics come naturally, whether we realize that or not. And now let's learn more about Kyligence. It's a SaaS product that very easy to use for small business that have minimum IT resource or none. It's so easy that an analyst can upload CSV file into Zen, then create metrics and dashboard in day one. Zen also scale well to support enterprise needs. So let's take a look at Zen architecture here. On the left side is a list of data sources that Zen can consume. Currently, data lake and object storage are only available in Amazon Web Services. We will support Azure and Google Cloud in the future. So data from applications such as Salesforce and SAP can be sourced for Zen as well. So in the middle is Kyligence and 4 core features. The first one is metrics catalog, where all created metrics are stored, so can be shared across organization. The second one is automation, using Kyligence Cloud Engine and AI to support data, small data, all the way to petabyte, very, very large data, like petabyte size. And third, it's goal, where user can add target value for existing metrics. Finally, it's API layer that makes metrics available to external BI tools such as Tableau or Power BI, also available on mobile apps and collaboration tools such as Slack. Now let's take a look deeper on feature for reusable metrics and KPI creation. The first one is metrics catalog, where a user can define metrics and their associated dimensions, such as date, region, and country. Users across different departments can share metrics via metrics catalog. Existing metrics can be reused on multiple dashboards. A user can derive a new metric using existing metrics. Next is goal, where a user can add target value to existing metrics, then turning them into key performance indicator. These two core features are important to manage metrics that are critical for business performance. Now, I'd like to share metrics platform case study. The first one is Pandora. In this case study, we will learn how metrics platform help large commercial bank improving their business process. During bank rapid growth, data team could barely keep up with the requests from business stakeholder. Let's take a look closely the process flow. Suppose on day one, business user requests 50 metrics. So on day two, business user and IT get together, identify data source and data element, and then involve ETL developer on day three. Then the ETL developer developing pipeline for 50 metrics on day 6. After the data available, then the analyst working with the business user to develop dashboard. After back and forth communication, the dashboard go live on day 12. So in average, it will take 12 days from request to dashboard delivery. After Pandora launch, the process changed. On day one, business user can search Pandora to identify if this some of these metrics, the 50 metrics that they request, are available in Pandora. In this case, they identify 30 metrics that they can reuse and derive another 10 metrics from existing one. So only 10 metrics left that need to be created. So on day 2, they got together with the IT developer doing requirement analysis, and data team came back saying that 5 out of metrics can be derived. So now only 5 new metrics that need to be implemented and require a ETL pipeline. So 45 out of 50 can be done by business user themselves. Only 5 out of 50 that require a ETL developer. So that's 90% development effort reduction. And then the delivery time was reduced by over 50% from 12 days before Pandora to 5 days after Pandora launch. So this case study illustrates how platform metrics truly help a large commercial bank to improve their business process. Second case study is Excel consolidation. Excel is very pervasive and everywhere. So this case study can happen at various sizes of organization, but for this case study, this happened at a small company. So the problem here is an analyst at a small company wants to consolidate data from 60 plus Excel file and use the data to create dashboards. Her boss wants the dashboard available online. Luckily, she found Zen, so she exported Excel file into CSV file, then load them into Zen. From there, she can create metrics, dimension, and dashboard. And the dashboard available within days. And with the Excel plugin, she can also access metric live in Zen using Excel without Excel data limitation. So key takeaway here is metric is critical in managing business performance, and Kyligence Sense can help organization to manage their metrics better. If you want to learn about Metric Star and Zen, please scan this QR code. With that, I open a Q&A session.